What's up, guys? It's me again, Christian Rodriguez, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose to go towards the entrepreneurial route and not the job route, right? And so lately, right, I've since I moved to Chicago, I decided to pursue an AI automation agency, right? I decided to do that instead of pursuing the job route, which I almost did. But So I graduated college with a finance degree that I don't even use. Um, I graduated college. I worked a bunch of labor jobs. I've worked as a package handler for both UPS and FedEx. Um, I've also worked at a deli. I've had to clean up. I had to, like behind the counter of the deli where customers order. Behind that counter, like under the cabinets, I had to clean up dead cockroaches with like a rag. It was disgusting. It was terrible, but it humbled me definitely. And I also I also worked a 9 to 5 job, like a regular, like corporate cubicle 9 to 5 job in near my hometown, my home area in New York. Well, where I grew up, right, like near that area. So it was. I thought it was nice. I had an ex girlfriend at the time. She was really happy for me, and then I realized like it's I found out that I was like, is this going to be my life for the next 30, 40 years? I have to wait. I have to invest a certain percentage of my income into my Roth IRA and do this for 30, 40 years and then wait till I'm 65 to retire. And I was just like, so my life's going to suck 5 days a week for 30, 40 years, for the next 30, 40 years. And I was just like, that doesn't really make sense to me. And like, it's comfortable, yes. You have a steady paycheck, yes. But for me personally, it didn't make sense to me. It sounded almost like I felt like I was in a cage. Like if I wanted to travel, I wanted to go on vacation, right? I have to go through office bureaucracy and ask the boss if ask me as an adult has to ask another adult if I can get a vacation approved, right? And you can't even do it longer than 2 weeks if you're in the US. If you're in Europe, yeah, you could do it for a month. US, if you do it any more than 2 weeks, then you're seen as a bum and they'll probably let you go. It's not the same, right? So you're working your nuts off most of your youthful years, right? I know this is mentioned in a Millionaire Fastlane. That's the thing. That's when I started really getting into books at that job, and I started listening to audiobooks. And I remember reading the Elon Musk biography on. I ended up stealing that book from a place. But yeah, I remember reading the Elon Musk biography, and it talked about how he was in South Africa. He left South Africa. He didn't exactly like do well right away. He didn't become like a billionaire right away. He went to Canada. He was like working like shit jobs. He was like digging holes, like working at a farm. And then he went to California, it's Silicon Valley, and he was, I think it was Zip 2, and he was living in an office, and he had to shower like at the local. I don't remember exactly. It's been a while since I read it, but I think it's the local gym. I remember reading these stories, right? And then I go through Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm listening to the audiobook of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and a lot of the stuff I didn't understand at the time, but I was like, oh shit! So there's like a different way that I can do it, right? I read the Cash Flow Quadrant that really resonated with me because I remember I at my jujitsu gym, right? I asked, so one of the guys at the gym had a Ferrari, and I remember I asked, I'm like, what do you do for a living? What do you do? And he said, oh, I own a construction company and I invest in real estate. And I was like, oh shoot. And I was like, and he said, you should read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So that's why I started reading it. That's like the biggest reason, right? I was like, oh shoot, like he did it. He didn't come from a rich family, right? And then I remember I ended up reading the Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco, and that book really opened me up. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing in this office? I should be building my own thing, right? That's the way I saw it. And it all started like making a little bit more sense to me, right? And that's the thing. It started making sense because I was just like, in a job, I don't have control. I don't have any leverage, right? I could get fired at any moment. The boss, it doesn't even have to be my fault. It could be a layoff. It could be something out of my control. It could be another pandemic and I just get laid off. It just shit happens, right? But when you're in control of your time, you're in control. Yes, of course, there's a price. People are going to say, yes, but there's a cost to being the boss. And 100% there's a cost to being the boss. There's some upfront price you have to pay. It's not, you have to do probably more work. You're going to be, doesn't matter if it's Wednesday or if it's Thursday or it's Saturday or Sunday, doesn't matter what day it is. Basically, you're going to be working all throughout all those days. And I'm fully aware of that, right? And that didn't discourage me. That's not what discouraged me, right? It may discourage many people, and that's people who are half committed, people who are like, it'd be nice, but it's not like a necessity for them. I wasn't one of those, right? That's the thing. I always liked the idea of being in control of my time. I always saw like when I would see business owners, I'd be like, wow, like they are the ones in control. Like no one's telling them no one's like demanding them what to do, right? And that's something that really always like, that's something that I've always really wanted, was to have like control of my own life, not another adult having control of my life. I already experienced that as a kid with my parents and school, because like at least my 9 to 5 job, all my jobs, what it felt like school all over again. And I hated school. What it felt like was I go to, you go to school Monday through Friday. Saturday and Friday night, you're excited. You're like, yes, the weekend, and you're excited. You're happy. And then Sunday nights comes along. You're like, oh, I gotta go back to school tomorrow. And that was the same thing with a job, right? And I'm like, that's not how you should live as an adult. That's not how life should be. So that's the reason why, like, that's the biggest reason why I think the payoff for entrepreneurship is far greater, because of the freedom you can get, the earning potential. There's no glass ceiling. You know that shit you hear about a glass ceiling, right? That's only for a job. That's only if you're employed, then you're out of control. You're not in control. You don't even have to be the most skilled. You could be the most skilled guy in the office, and someone else might get higher pay or better benefits or the better office or whatever, or a longer vacation, just because the boss likes him more. You know what I mean? That's stuff like that made me feel like I'm in control of my own ascension. I'm in control of my own path, not someone else, right? And I remember, like, in even the Millionaire Fastlane, MJ DeMarco talks about hitchhiking. He says, when you're hitchhiking, you run the risk of getting thrown off path, of getting tossed off the pickup truck, right? Because you're sitting in the bed of a pickup truck, while the driver, who's the fast laner, is warm in the driver's seat, right? You need to, that's why I picked it, right? That's why I picked it. And I also grew up. That's another thing too. I grew up, and I would see like adults, right? Like basically all the adults I knew who just like had regular jobs, and they had pretty uninspiring lives, right? You know, like they made whatever average money, drove an average car, had a average or below average woman, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't want to sound like I'm trying to say this without sounding like an a-hole, but it's just, there was something that seemed wrong with it. It almost seemed like they settled for less. Like, as a kid, I didn't fully understand it, because when I thought of all like the like the better lifestyle, like the freedom, right? The traveling, even the dating opportunities, right? Like the higher quality women, the like the luxurious lifestyle. I was like wondering, oh, that must be for professional athletes. That must be for celebrities. That must be for extremely rich people, like other people, right? And that's the thing. These books like really taught me not to. I think that the books that I've been reading like teach me that it's not for other people. It's for anyone that's willing to go through it. And that's why I chose what I chose, right? Even I started posting content on YouTube, right? So I could just, like put myself out there, put my personal brand out there, right? Create some sort of personal brand. This is a long-term play, right? This is something that it's going to take that I plan on doing for a while. But yeah, that's why I chose entrepreneurship. I don't see another way of following what everyone else did where I grew up, because no one that I grew up with has an inspiring life, right? So I'll leave it at there. Thank you guys so much for listening. Subscribe. Take care.